the award? Where is it?
We did the first time we came back.
Yes.
No, the Indonesian version was withdrawn. Whenever you translate, because there are at least 5 or 6 different fonts being used in there, so you have to find the equivalent.
For those of you who may not know, the Eisner Awards is given every year at the San Diego Comic Convention, and it is named after Will Eisner, a very famous comic artist from the past. In fact, it was supposed to be for Jack Kirby, but something along the way went awry. So Eisner Awards is equivalent to the Oscars, I guess, for comics, and this is a big deal. And you can see from the book itself, the accolades come from everywhere, from The Economist, to the New York Times, to the Straits Times, to smaller newspapers and magazines, and it's incredible that everyone shares the same appreciation and astonishment for the sheer audacity and epic nature of the art of Charlie Chan Hock Chye. I think I made a pretty good Manson seller. How do you feel being lauded and awarded all around the world, including Singapore, for your astonishing achievement?
I would say it's a sort of curious thing, right? As an artist, you tend to have two sides to you. One is the overconfident side, and one is the more pessimistic side. So the overconfident side always believes that everything you do will sell and win awards, and the other side believes that you will just disappear into the ether, right? When I finished Charlie Chan, I think I had a sense that it was a good book. Like it was different from other books that I had read myself. So I hoped that it would do well. But I think the extent to how well it did was surprising to some extent, right? Like I never thought it would have much legs outside of Singapore, because it was so Singapore-centric that I didn't think anybody would be interested in translating it overseas and so on. For the nominations, I think it was also same thing, a mixture of like excitement but also fear, because I did other projects that had like one nomination before, and then when you didn't win, you feel a bit disappointed. So I was like, imagining if I had 6 nominations and didn't win any of them, like I would be like crushed.
So the second thing is, if you're a comics freak, geek, nerd, whatever derogatory term they'll throw at you, you'll appreciate the magnitude of the research that went into the different not the characters, but the genres and even the periods. You go, you can see everything from manga to Jack Kirby style to you name it, to Walt Kelly, Pogo, and more and more and more. And I think that it takes a lot of research, but how much of it is actually inspiration compared to research?
In terms of the style that Charlie Chan himself was producing, I would say it's mostly research, in the sense that I would draw a timeline of Singapore history and then have a timeline of comics history next to it, like whether it's American, British, or say Japanese. And then I'll try to find a comic or a style that would fit to the particular story about Singapore I wanted to tell, right? So for example, World War II, I think Singapore experience was very easily mapped onto the war stories that EC used to put up, mostly through Harvey Kurtzman. So they're kind of mapping, right? And then I guess there was some inspiration in the sense that not all the styles are based on one artist. So certain styles are based on also imagining Charlie Chan being influenced by several artists at the same time at a period. Right, so I think the Roachman one was meant to be a combination of, let's say, Jack Kirby, Steve Ditko, and Japanese Gaggy Club, which is independent Japanese comics. So in that sense, it's not just pure reference to one artist, but a combination of styles to some degree. Yeah.
So much so that a lot of people say that Charlie Chan Hock Chye is actually a real character. Can you confirm that
In a sense, if it was, it'd be easier, right? I just have to like take his comics. But I remember the first time we had a book launch in Kinokuniya, and at the end of it, someone came up to me and asked like, where is Charlie Chan? Why is he not at his own book launch? So I had to explain to her that, the whole thing.
Yeah, because the character is so believable. The fact that he's in Kinokuniya shows that he's got good taste, and then the fact that he wanders around reading here and there, my goodness. the credibility is already fixed in the minds of especially those who are on the Kinokuniya side. You know that this book is so universal that you can find it being translated in quite a few languages. If I'm not mistaken, in the book itself they say about nine different languages. Would you like to talk about this, the highlights of the languages that were being translated, and what obstacles or challenges or wow, what happened? Why is this not this way? Then the second part of this question is, I'm sure there are a few other translations that will be coming up, right?
I think most of them were, I wouldn't say it's straightforward, but we translated as accurately from the original English as possible for most of the editions. The only one that had some issues was the Chinese version. I think the China, this one, right?
This one.
This one.
This one is the China version, this is the Taiwan one.
Yeah, because as you probably know, China has more censorship issues. So whenever we mention communists in the book, in sort of a negative connotation, you have to take out the word communist. And there's also a map somewhere in there of the Southeast Asia, right? And because that area is disputed, the sort of the territory disputed, we had to adjust the map in order to not conflict with the Chinese version of what the map should look like. Yeah. So it was a bit of that dilemma, right? Because every time someone translates your book, you want it to be accurate, but then you try to understand local context. So our solution was to put a disclaimer at the back that said that this version of the book is not the same as the original, right? And I think that's the, as far as I understand, the strategy that a lot of people who get the books done in China also pursue. They just put a note there so that if you read carefully, you will know that there's some censorship going on, but it's not too obvious. The other one, so the other languages that we have in the pipeline, or inquiries, there's a Korean inquiry. The Japanese one has been ongoing for like 4 or 5 years. For some reason, they fired the last translator, and we don't know why, because they won't tell us. And so it's still in limbo at the moment.
Is there any language that surprised you that was requested?
Czech, I think, was surprising. Czech, Portuguese, Brazilian also was, yeah, because I have no idea what the comic scene is like in those countries, so for me, it's all surprising in that sense. Whereas I know France and Japan, US are all strong markets, right? So the smaller countries, which I don't really know too much about, I'm surprised by. But the one actually maybe I can ask the crowd here is, we have an offer now for a Russian edition, right? It's for me very troubling because of the whole Russia-Ukraine thing. Yeah, I'm not sure what to think about it. Like, should we allow it or should we not because of all the complications?
Kinokuniya has a very large selection of Russian books in our store in Dubai. And I think it's there's no harm doing a translation in that language because Russian is the language of Tolstoy and all those authors that I cannot pronounce their names.
Some of the events in the story are tied to the Malayan emergency and the Malaysia and Singapore's relationship at that time, but there's no Malay translation of this book. Why?
I suppose there's a sense that people who read are interested in this subject in Malaysia would also be able to read English. It's similar to Germany. I think Germany has a strong English reading population, so they never seen a need to translate this book into German. There were inquiries, but they never quite went along with it. So I suspect they feel like there's sort of an overlap between English readers in Malaysia and people who are interested in this comic, so there's no reason to produce a Malay version of it. That's my sense. I don't know if it's...
Actually, that's a very good question because I've seen, for instance, Buku Fiksi, one of the book publisher retailers in Malaysia. I know the boss personally. He's also another comics geek, and the next time I see him, I'll ask him the question because definitely the reach in Malay would be much greater among the Malays, obviously, and I think it's a good
Indonesian as well.
Indonesian as well. That's a good question, actually.
The Indonesian version was withdrawn at the last minute. They agreed to buy the right from us, but on the day of the signing, they said we changed our mind.
Why?
They don't give you a reason, but I suspect I didn't give them any money under the table. Malaysian don't sell is exactly what you said. People who read it in English can read it in English, so there's no point in translating it to Malay. To get the Malay crowd who can't read English. Yeah, that's how the books in Malaysia are like. They can read English quite well. The Thai translation, you don't have a copy here, is bigger than
The silkworms are right.
yeah, the silkworm publishing. The Thai version is bigger because they can't get the words into the bubble. So we have to make the book bigger. So I suspect the German may have the same problem. The words are too big to get into the bubble. The latest version that has been published is Polish.
Is it Polish yet? Not yet.
It's out. It's in they used the 5th anniversary edition cover.
Was there anyone when you were growing up? Is there anyone that has given you a lot of positive influence towards becoming a graphic artist, or just loving art in general?
I would say both my grandfather on my dad's side, he also was a book lover, so he had a lot of his room in Seremban, right? So included there was a lot of comics, right? So I would read a lot of those comics that he had, and then my mom was also always, is your mom here?
Yeah, somewhere.
My mom is here somewhere, but she used to buy us, me and my sister, comics all the time, right? Dino, Dandy, all this British stuff, and also Richie Rich, all the kids stuff. So, I guess in that sense, I was always exposed to a lot of comics growing up.
Charlie Chan Hock Chye was recommended to me by my literature teacher and my art teacher in VJ, so you are well remembered there. Thank you.
When the comic book first came out, there was a lot of mean things, I'll be polite here, from the government and so on. So there's a lot of negativity, etc., and people were, quite a few people were not happy about it. So that's the negative side. What is the main positive thing that you got out of this situation that you were in at that time?
Most people will talk about the Streisand effect, right? They will say that because of the government's grant withdrawal, the news of this thing became viral, and so it helped us sell some of the books. Me and Edmund will say that that viralness can only get you so far, and the book's content itself is what helped sell the book up to today. But yeah, the controversy in a way helps the book to a certain degree, in a shorter term maybe, because people hear the news and they might buy the book. In the longer term, it's not very clear to me whether it's good or bad, because for a book to sell, people have to be aware of it, right? They have to be have heard of the book. And I think state support can be a big factor in this, right? The country itself plays a role in promoting its own culture. Look at Korea, look at Japan. The countries themselves will promote their own culture quite a lot, but Singapore cannot promote Charlie Chan. And Edmund tells me that that the book is still not allowed to be displayed at the Frankfurt Book Fair because it's NAC sponsored. So in that sense, there's a bit of it's a double-edged sword maybe. Some people will read the controversy and think I would read this book. Other people will see it and say I should avoid it because I don't believe in this kind of critique of the government. So I can't tell whether long run is good or bad. Maybe.
Earlier on, I was always thought that the author is kind of older ages, and then show respect to earlier generation. Until today, I really knew, it actually is a fiction. But actually, I'm being cheated by 10 years. But actually, I think it's just a joke. I feel that give me another meaning. Actually, it's not necessary. It's really a real person or not a real person. I think. I cannot, speak myself well, but I feel it's kind of it's more interesting. So I think even it's not a real person, it's really reflective of the time period, the history. I believe a lot of influences, some people giving you as well. So I think it's more than kind of fascinating to me.
I was conscious that whether the reader knew it's real or fake was a question that we asked, and during the process, I think at some point I considered making it clear in the story that he was not real. But at the end of the day, I thought just let it be lah. It would give the reader a chance to, who didn't know, maybe one reading of it that was where he really thought it was real, and when they realized the truth, they could read it again. So they have two different experiences of reading the book. Right, so it sort of would be interesting that way.
Yeah. And how do you build up your career? What are the key milestones?
So the short version is when I was 19, very young at the time, I started writing my own comic strip, and I sent it into the newspaper here. The newspaper was now it's only online. It used to be a tabloid newspaper they published every day, and they actually accepted my comic and published it as a daily strip for about a year. So once I did that, I felt it was so interesting to me that people would pay me to draw my comics that I wanted to make it a career, right? And then I tried very hard to make it happen. I went to art school, I did various projects to try to get to a stage where I could make my own comics, right? And yeah, it is, I'm not sure how interesting the story is, but it was and it is a struggle because comics doesn't earn you that much money, right? And Singapore is expensive, so it's a constant tension for me between pursuing what I want to do and having a viable career in that sense. Yeah. It's the book's success has helped on that path, but it's still not easy, I would say.
Hi.
Hello.
The first time I read your book, it was like last week at my school library, and it's like my favorite book.
Thank you.
You tell this incredibly nuanced story about the period between 1963 and 1965 in a way that captures the broad brushstrokes of what happened, but it's also really, it's totally foundational for contemporary Singapore and contemporary Malaysia, and it's sort of radically undertold as a story. I was really curious as I was reading that, so what stories didn't make it into the book? What are the things that you wanted to tell or the histories that you wanted to explore that we don't see in here? Because even that, a few pages of these animals interacting with each other has so much depth to it. So I was just curious sort of how you were thinking about history and representing history and what else you wanted to explore. I know capitalism is the future one, but as you look at this book.
I think it's not just this book, right, but any book would leave things out. Like it's inevitable that you leave stuff out. And for me, I guess the guiding principle was to have the book be, I don't want to say easy to read, but easier to read, right? So if we include stories of the other, let's say, founders like Goh Keng Swee or a lot of other players, for me it would have been a lot of more bandwidth for the reader to kind of get to know who is this, who is that, right? The same reason why I made this story about one artist rather than a generation of artists was to keep the narrative fairly streamlined. Whether or not there were things that I wish I had put in, I think more in terms of when I was looking at Singapore history, what were the sort of like key topics, right, that we still kind of like grapple with in our modern, current thinking about our past, including like why was Singapore, why did we leave Malaysia, right? The one version of it always said they kicked us out. But I think looking at the facts, it's a lot clearer that we played an active role in wanting to step out ourselves, right? We made this decision not to be kicked out, but to kind of like break apart for our own needs. Right? So I think those are the things that I was curious about, like was linking on communists, etc., etc. So these are things that I think I tried as much as I could to grapple with within the book, and yeah, I don't know if I left stuff out. I mean, that's just probably more for other people to tell me, right? Like I think you should have covered this or that. But yeah, the sort of guiding principle was to have a book that was still accessible at some level. Yeah.
Comic in Singapore, there's so few people. So apart from yourself, I only can think of in my childhood the author who wrote Mr. Kiasu. Then apart from that, the only one who's still active in my mind is Wee Kian Beng, Tan Zhan Ning. I know his products are very different lah. He's Chinese shonen, right? So I was just a bit curious, but not very serious, but a bit capable question. Do you know him? Do you interact? Do you ever thought of doing something similar to what he does? Yeah.
I know him only through brief email exchanges. I think we invited him to join the. We organized an event called Speech Bubble like 5 years ago at the National Library, and we had a Singapore exhibition. So he was part of it because he was, like you said, one of the major creators locally. but I think our approaches are very different. Right? So, but there are more people here. There's Hong Ting, Ko Hong Ting, right? There's especially now I think a lot more younger artists are creating comics, right? Yeah, some of them are like, I know there's a girl called Xi who uses it to explain climate change on Instagram, right? So, yeah.
I wanted to expand and follow up on the previous question. It's been 10 years since the book. What are your perspectives on the last 10 years and the influence on the book on the local scene, be it Singapore or the region? And how do you foresee the next 10 years? Will Charlie Chan have any grandchildren, great-grandchildren? Charlie Chan family.
Well, I mean, some people have told me that the book inspired them to make comics, right? Like the one who was on climate change. So that's the only way I can gauge who is influenced, if they actually tell me that they like the book and make comics because of it. Beyond that, we've not done any market research to actually know what impact it has had. Predicting the future I don't think I can do that. I mean, I'm really surprised that a 10-year anniversary edition exists, because most of my other books, all my other books, they go out of print, they don't get any new editions, you only have one edition and that doesn't even sell that edition, right? So I hope it has legs that we have 20-year edition at some point, but it's hard to tell.
I'm sure you read a lot. Do you see any artists that you can see using the momentum of such a narrative and such a story? Is it sprout other generations?
So, okay, what I did notice with Charlie Chan, there did seem to be more comics about our history through comics. I think that there was like Bicycle by Chia Xin An. So I think it made that mini genre more viable. So I did see more books like about Singapore history coming out after that. But that's the limit of it. I would love to claim that it has changed the world, but it hasn't.